Ready?
Thank you. Nicole has been wonderful, and my boss, Dr. Jacobs, has been really, really supporting this project, and it's really getting more and more attention from around the campus. And I saw Jillian is here. I was so happy to see you because Jillian showed me an email last semester when we were in class saying that one of her professors sending her the links for our speaker series. So this was from last year's, and if you are interested, you can go Understanding Educational Diversity Around the World, and then you will see on YouTube and on education website. And these are the countries that Nicole mentioned that we presented last year. And these are all our wonderful speakers or international students from different countries. And these are the countries that are to be presented and tentative schedule for this semester. And all presentations will be on Friday at noon. So I just want to spread the word once again, saying that this is a great opportunity really for international students to have a space to share their expertise and their experiences, but also for us, like Rong said, to learn from each other. So today we'll talk about China. And when I was trying to put together the program and try to think of, okay, what should I put as my title, right? China. Do you know that while we're going to talk about, do you know that China has an area of 9 million square meters, GDP, population of 1.3 billion? And Nicole was like, a quick overview of education in China, a fast overview of education. How am I going to talk about China in 45 minutes, like over 2,500 years? So I cannot help but put every subtitles and overview, educational system overview, and I'm gonna also talk about some facts, but also talk about some differences, some aspects that I recognize as different in here, US and in China, and how that kind of impact how we kind of engage international students. So after that, we talk about some philosophies in Chinese education history, and because I'm in philosophical and social foundations of education in global studies and education, so I kind of pay attention, but it's an overview. And then after that, if we have time, we'll talk about some contemporary educational reforms and some of the remaining questions or struggles and puzzles that I'm also facing with. And I'll make sure that we'll have enough time for Q&A. So this is Chinese educational system. From early childhood, which Ge Hui will talk more about later. And then 9 years of compulsory education. From UN's number, actually 99.7% have received basic education with compulsory 9 years education. Then after that, we have senior like middle school, and then 3 years, and then Gaokao, which is notorious. But I will talk about its historical roots and how it is evolving until now. We have this after this national entrance exam. So last year, June 2013, there were 9 million students taking the Gaokao. So after the Gaokao, people can choose to go to get an associate degree in the 3 years like colleges, or go to 4 years universities. And this is bachelor 4 years. I spent my 4 years of my best time in life in Beijing. Then 2 years masters. Then I lost the chance because I was dropped by US educational system to come to here to get my PhD. Otherwise, I would spend 20 years in China from primary school to doctorate. So this is a macro look of educational system in China. And one thing that I have been thinking about actually recently, and just had a very in-depth conversation with Anna Tsai, my mentor, yesterday about this concept of banzi. So this is how students are organized in China. So from primary school the first year of primary school, we are grouped into a class together. So say we have 28 people here. We go from the very first day, we go into this classroom. And we stay in this classroom. This was my first year Chinese language teacher. And she stayed with us. So these were my classmates. This was our gathering last winter, so last spring festival. This group of students come in to the same classroom for 6 years. And the teacher followed us, right? So what happened then? One, we developed very in-depth, very close relationship with each other. We formed a community. So after it was 15 years later, we had this gathering. So we are like sisters and brothers. It's very relationship and people oriented. But one thing that I've been thinking about is, so this kind of organization, and the same kind of organization developed also when we were in middle school, and then we took the exam, go to high school. Still, in 3 years of high school, we were grouped with the same classmates for 3 years, and then we took so with the long-term relationship, studying hard together, fight against each other, like we developed that kind of network, that kind of community. But in that I was thinking about, so it's good in that sense, but another sense is we actually didn't have much or many opportunities to meet or talk to people outside of this classroom, to develop really close relationship to, we say, strangers, right? So this is one thing that I found different than here, right? Here, you go to classes. The teacher doesn't follow you for 6 years. And you go to different classes with different students, different classmates. So you don't have this concept of banzi or class. And so then it's very easy for Americans here, to meet with people that you don't know. So this is something that I found different here than in China, and how actually it impacts how we engage with international students here. So we may think that international students here, they may expect that we develop more close relationship with people in my classroom, but here without the opportunity, which is, hey, how are you? Like we say, hey, how are you? But then actually don't develop that kind of in-depth relationship. So this is something that I've been thinking about, that is different, and how it may impact our engagement with international students. So that's educational system. Then I'm gonna talk about some philosophies of education in Chinese history. So this one is very famous, Mr. Confucius. We should say that education, or the philosophy started from, what was it, 2,500 years ago? Yes, Xia dynasty. But at that time, education mostly is a privilege for the elites. Developed into the Spring and Ottoman or Warring States period, 700 around BC, the content, or we studied mostly were the 4 books and 5 classes we termed as classics. So we can see just from the title that they mainly are in liberal arts, right? Many are in liberal arts, not so much in science. And there are also some private academy that, for example, Confucius would teach like 71 disciples. So, but we have to say that Confucianism is only one among more than 100 other philosophies in those times. And that was in about 140 BC, the Emperor Wudi kind of just named Confucianism as the official state ideology, and that's why Confucianism lives until now, without knowing others. But at that time, we also developed that civil service exam. And why I brought this up was like, so what we study as mostly liberal arts, and then they have this, most people study that took this civil service exam to serve in the government. What is being tested, actually, they were mostly write essays of political relevance, of social relevance. So they had to be familiar with these classics, and that's why kind of, all those people that they have to memorize the 5 classics. And that famous impression of Chinese students as so good in memorizing things, and we have taken standardized tests for almost 2,000 years. So we are talking about standardized tests right now in US and how long it has been suffering. We have been suffered from that. But like we can see there is a difference and how that evolved into, I will show you later what we've been tested in college entrance exam are all about multiple choices questions. So a little bit, since Confucianism is one of the, we would always say, attribute goods and bads all to Confucianism. So I want to talk a little bit about the Chinese learning Confucian tradition. So obviously, education has a very significant role in everybody's life. Like how important the whole society attributes to education. But the main beliefs is the educability for all and perfectibility for all, meaning that everyone is educable, and depending on the effort or how hard you work. So I was taking a class about global issues in learning and pedagogy, and we were reading the Stevenson and Stigler book. They were talking about how we try to compare American students and Chinese students or East Asian students, and we would say, for example, when an American student did a good job in school, you would say, well, how you are so smart, right? But in China, maybe, oh yeah, you work hard. So there is a difference in what we think as why we perform well. Learning is very much from the will, the effort that you put into. And what is the belief for learning? What's the purpose of learning? Is for self-cultivation. It's for moral and spiritual cultivation. And they also, we can see from this picture that actually Confucius, Mr. Confucius himself was very theological, but then we don't know why throughout the history it evolved into that it's about rote learning or just memorization. So actually there was a deep approach to learning. Memorization is to help understanding through reflection and inquiry. So there are some common held opinions about Chinese students in this area and very badly attributed to Confucian tradition. So I want to say I don't think there is, or maybe there's the paradox of why Chinese students are so good in those international tests and performed so well, right? So maybe there is some confusions here in how students from China or in China approach learning and approach what we see as memorizing. And another aspect is the relationship between student and teacher. So if I think the most common impression of Chinese is like they are kind of passive and obedient and silent in class. They don't talk much in class, right? But then the question is why and what are the reasons? So I know some of the discussions was about Chinese students. They attribute very much to face. So we don't want to lose face, and we don't want to speak in public in order not to make mistakes like Sophy is doing right now, because we don't want to lose face. But there is a very rich or like complicated issues involved in this. So if we attribute everything about silence or interface issue, then there's it kind of serves as a barrier for us to really understand what's going on in the process. So this is a little bit of what I think may help us think about what's happening in our classroom right now and how we can better understand our students in our class. So, I said philosophies. And so throughout, Confucianism is the one, but among more than 100 others isms. So in the Republican era, Sun Zhongshan, Sun Yat-sen brought this concept of democracy into China. And Dewey actually also lectured in China, bring this democracy in education and experience in education in China. There are actually a flowering of laboratory school in China when Dewey was there. And then after that, 1940s, we bring in Marxism, right? And Russian model of education. After that, the founding of People's Republic of China. And after 1997, kind of we are getting more and more neoliberalized, or as David Harvey said, neoliberalization with Chinese characteristics. So when I was visiting Shanghai this last summer, actually, I was talking with a philosopher in Shanghai, philosopher of education, and she was like, I don't know if we have a philosophy of education now because of how much it has been evolving throughout the history, and we've been almost just embracing from Western philosophies. And Confucianism, even though with this long-lasting tradition and impact, it's been mixed, it's been evolved throughout. So philosophers of education in China are now striving to really establish, okay, I'll ask questions. What is our philosophy of education right now in contemporary China? So this is a kind of a historical trajectory of how education has been evolving since 1949, the founding of People's Republic of China. So from 1949 to 1957, it was a very nationalized and centralized era. So economy was very much centralized. Education was also very much centralized. So with the Marxism and Leninism, there was a very much expansion in the quantity of education, the disciplines we brought in, we established, the students that we educated throughout until 1965. Then now we have the great Cultural Revolution for 10 years, and education was almost destroyed at that time. But then in the Reconstruction era, education and economy was very much tied together. And from 1985, with the enactment of the educational reform, there's a diversification of educational funding, and that's when private colleges and universities got flowering from those times. And from 1993, there is a push in China towards marketization, towards socialist market economy. So education also was very much privatized. And from 2002, we could say that the priority of Chinese education has been turned into the equality and equity issues, and which we will talk more later. So in 1978, which is the beginning of the Chinese opening up to the world reform, education was the priority was modernization towards the world and the future, which is towards privatization, liberalization, marketization, and globalization. And this is from our Mr. Deng Xiaoping, what he he envisioned as China's education reform. And the philosophy was groping for stones to cross the rivers. 摸着石头过河. It's a Chinese proverb, but quoted by Deng Xiaoping. It means that it's an experiment, right? It's very much experimentation, and we don't know the road across the river yet, so we built the road with all these stones. And with the transition to market economy. But then we have to think, what does it mean when it comes to education? We think about all the challenges and opportunities that comes with this philosophy. So one of the strong right now is the 2020 blueprint, which is an outline for China's national plan for medium and long-term education reform and development. And its priorities, as I said, achieving universal basic education, which is 9 years compulsory education, and to address the equity issues. And we will talk about how many gaps we have in terms of equity issue. And post-compulsory education, so the saying is now we are trying to also achieve compulsory or universal high school education, and try to build up an innovation society with world-class education. And I don't know what does it mean, world-class education or world-class university, right? As I said, equity and equality has been the priority in educational reform right now. And we can see at least there are 4 gaps, rural-urban gaps, and I'll show you some pictures of the vast disparities happening between rural and urban, and geographic regions, ethnicities, and genders. And the priority from quantity to quality education, and the quest for creativity among our students, and if even possible for them to learn to be critical. So, as we said, there are 56 ethnic groups, but there are extreme variations in educational enrollment and attainment. So these are some figures that can show how vast or how disparate they are in different regions in China and among different ethnicities. High school has been the bottleneck throughout the nation. So we can see that even though, as I showed you, 99.7% according to UN's statistics, that China has achieved universal basic education or compulsory education, we can see the disparities, right? So this is among Beijing area, yes, 100% of compulsory education, but then in other areas, it's less than 90, or between 60 to 90, even some areas lower than 60. So we can see the disparities between different regions. And the population of urban and rural area, like the urbanization movement has been brought more and more population into the cities. But in terms of resources, environment for students in rural area and in urban area are very much different. Another one about, I kind of just go over it very fast. There are 44%, more than 44% of population are still living in rural area. That's rural population. And we know that China right now is experiencing the historical record of migration, right? 260 million people every year migrating from rural area to work in the cities. And this is the picture that a student took with her grandparents and without her parents, because her parents were working in the cities. And in the just this last week for the Spring Festival, these are migrant workers trying to go back home to spend time with their families, and how their movement, their mobility, their migration impact their kids' education. Some pictures about classroom in China. Sit still and listen to your teacher carefully. Mostly, it's still. When I visited the public school that I graduated from, it's still like this. Not as nice, but still like this. Sit still and listen. And I still remember how I was taught to sit, like put my hands up here and then just listen, right? So this also helped me to think about how much different it is here. That actually I don't want you to sit still. This is what's happening in China, but here it's different, right? We sit in circle, we talk, we have discussions. So this is also something that for us to think about when our students come from maybe how many years? 9 years, 10 years, 12 years of schooling like this, how much they have been cultured. And this is kind of a listening or silent listening for them is the right way to do, and not so much about our talking and asking questions in class. Even though we can be critical about this is where they come from, right? So this is what I saw in Shanghai last summer, how students were trying to, teachers are trying to encourage their students to speak up in class, and they are trying to make arts and do in outside of the classroom. So there are a lot of differences between what is achievable and what is possible in rural area and in urban area. And going on to secondary education, there is a very serious checking system among elite schools and non-elite schools, and how many resources they are available to different schools. International schools and private schools now getting more and more popular in China, and actually, like from my own village, that even though parents are so hard in getting through life, they would try so hard to have their kids go to private schools because of the resources available there and the teacher qualifications available there. So it's been an ongoing problem. And just a little bit about the subjects. So there are 2 tracks: liberal arts and science, and what they learned in each tracks. And after school tutoring programs, a craze for math or English, Olympic context. One thing to kind of mention is the one-child policy and how much of expectation and parental involvement in the kids' education is now really trying to developing in China. And I'm sure Groping will touch upon this, like how much of a cultural issue in parenting. So I just talked about with Nicole that June 7, 8, 9, like it's the most important days for our life because it will determine where we are going after that, right? What kind of universities we will be able to go into. And this is kind of what we just mentioned about the civil service exam, how it evolved into college entrance exam right now, and this is what they are testing right now. This is English subject of all multiple choices text. But there's a quota system in the admission. So in the university will allocate how many students I'm going to recruit in Beijing or in Fujian province, right? So there is a very different admission rates among different regions in China, and how hard it would be for kids from rural area, from Fujian province, to go into Peking University or some other universities in Beijing or in Shanghai. It would be different from students in Shanghai or in Beijing. So another thing that we were mentioning is the strive for innovation, society, and the strive, even if it's possible, for students to be critical. So this past summer, I went to have a talk with students from the public school that I graduated from. So these are the kids that I talked to, more than 400 students, and that boy was trying very hard to tell me that how much he loves writing, how much he wants to put his ideas into, but because he has to study for exam, and he was like even crying in front of all these students, trying to tell me like how much he's passionate about writing and want to strive for something different. But because of the exam, that he kind of have to give up that, right? So it doesn't mean that there's no drive, no urge of creativity in students, but because of the system is set up for them, how much they have to put up. So with that challenges, there are also some opportunities. We can see that government has been very dedicated and to improve, to increase funding in education, and after 20 years of trying, finally, the investment in education accounts for about 4% of total GDP in China last year, and it was a national celebration. Then the government was trying to develop a 人民满意的教育 education. This translation has always meant like education to the satisfaction of the people. And I was thinking about what kind of satisfaction, who are the people, right? What kind of education? So I proposed another translation in my presentation last year in Shanghai. And education actually should be for the full potential of the people. I worked with Mark on this paper presentation. So it was really good. And there is a strong desire for quality education, or we say 素质教育, right? Last thing that I want to talk about is the internationalization of education. Because of the desire for quality education, more and more people are trying to go abroad to study, and China is actually also striving to internationalize its higher education. And I don't have time to go over the 12 main approaches. Many are trying to send students out, fund students out on their private or public funds, and getting students into China, institutional partnerships, which Rong has been working on, and some other aspects. But so the outbound of Chinese education, and this, I think we'll talk more this afternoon. This is from IIE's Open Door report, and Chinese education accounted for 29% of US international students. And these are international students right now, are also increasing, but mainly is really trying to internationalizing curriculum and pedagogy in China. And what they do is really trying to introduce English language textbooks into Chinese campuses, either originally as English version or translated into Chinese version, and implementing English or bilingual instruction, increasing the numbers of foreign languages and cross-cultural studies. But then there are also some problems in this, and this is a faculty narrative about how hard it is actually really trying to implement all these curriculum because of the different pedagogical philosophies. And so there's still a long way to go, really trying to internationalize. And yeah, if you have some questions, is it? I was trying to look for clock, so yeah, so.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Yes. Yeah, I don't have clock here, so I was trying to look for. Yes.
I'm not sure if this is a question or more of a comment, but I find it's really fascinating to hear about the education system in the sense that there's so many people who are uneducated or undereducated, because I think in this country we often get a sense that, you know, the students in China are better educated because we hear these statistics about, you know, the students' scores in math and science are so much better than ours, and why are we doing so poorly, and we're getting beaten out by all the students in the Asian countries, and, you know, and China is right up there.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, maybe the question is really, where is that disconnect?
So yeah, so the most famous one would be PISA, right? From OECD, and Shanghai actually. So it's not like China; it's Shanghai.
Okay.
Students in Shanghai, for the first time, took the exam. Maybe like it was 2009, or yeah, it was the second PISA test, and students from Shanghai, like they jumped to the first one, right? Yes. So then actually, so it's been a big deal here. Like it's a big discussion of, oh, Chinese students are doing so great, but there are not much discussions within China upon this incident. They know what our students are good at, taking tests. And if we have more time, and this is a very interesting question to think about actually, we can see what are being tested, right? What are the areas they are testing, and what kind of questions they are asking. Who are the students taking the test? So in China, it's only students in Shanghai, and I don't know how they selected those students, but we can see Shanghai's education, or even just like primary, secondary education, it's among the best in China, right? So it's not an average of China, but here it's different. Students here.
So one of the things maybe that we should consider is, who are they testing it? Who are they comparing these? Who are we being compared to?
Right.
Are they comparing our national numbers to select groups in certain other countries?
Right.
So maybe that's
right.
very good.
Right. So the discussion or the debate has been, our education in US is at crisis, and we have from this a nation at risk to no child left behind, and now race to the top is always a crisis in education discourse, right? But where is the crisis come from? Right. Is it also from this PISA comparison? Then we see that education in US is in crisis. Is it really a crisis, right? Or are they really?
Should be and not be improving, because I do think that we have problems in our education system as well. But then when you compare to what you've shown us, that's also yeah, everyone has problems.
Right. Yes. So yeah, that's a very good very good question to think about. Thank you. Yes, Tammy.
Having outlined sort of the historical influences, both internal and external, on the educational system, I'm curious if you can make any sorts of projections or educated guess about what will happen to the Chinese educational system when all of these students who are being educated internationally in the US, in the UK, and Australia go back, or a large majority of them go back, and how that will impact, if in any way, sort of the attitude towards the educational system.
I will devote my dissertation into that question. Yes.
I was wondering, can you go back to the slide where you say percentage of admissions for each
percentage? Okay, for each province.
Yes. Now, can you explain that? I mean, is that if it were here, I would say that's the percentage of people who apply to this university. But no, I mean, it must have a completely different meaning, because I don't understand this stuff.
Oh, okay. So the number of candidates, how many high schoolers took the college entrance exam, and how many were admitted into whatever universities that they apply.
So, for example, in Tibet, there would be a very small number of people even taking the exam, right? So that's why 73% was so high.
Right. And we also have to say that Tibet mostly are ethnic minority groups, and there are preferential admission policies. but we can also see, yeah.
So Guizhou, Gansu is a very low number, probably because what, very few universities to go to?
Well, so the point of this is that there is a quota system for each university. How many students they are going to admit in different provinces in China. So mostly, for example, in Gansu, right? They would, so universities in Gansu will maybe allocate more students. This is kind of like the concept of land grant university. So they would admit more students from Gansu, and then they would have less. But then students are free to choose to apply whatever universities among in different provinces.
The question, I guess, maybe is why is Gansu, for example, why is the number percent admitted so low? Is it because they're not as good, or because they're being preferentially discriminated against, or because there's more of them and so there's fewer spots for them? Why is the percent admission for that particular group low?
For Gansu, so
Just for example.
yeah, okay, yeah. How am I gonna explain this? So they are free to apply for all other provinces or universities in other provinces, and because of the quota system,
They're not going to get in.
right? It's, for example, so I'm from Fujian, and Peking University each year will recruit 20 liberal arts students, 20 high schoolers, science, high school graduates, right? And I'm competing with how many? I don't know the statistics, but the number that they will recruit in Fujian and in Beijing are so much different, and that's why like I have to strive so much harder to get in.